Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, whatcassread. Today, I've got a new setup, new microphone that you can see. We're still in testing phases, and I really hope this turns out because it took me so long to even get to this point of having everything like literally set up on my monitors in front of me and my camera in front of me. And okay, I'm so nervous that this isn't going to go how I wanted it to. But we are going to try and make the most of it, and we are filming our very first video with this new microphone. This new video is really something that I had been thinking about. Like, I randomly thought of it a couple of weeks ago because if you are a fantasy reader, you probably saw the announcement that Christopher Paolini is now releasing new illustrated editions of Aragon. He's releasing the newest book in the inheritance cycle world, that is Murtagh. So that got me thinking, like, there's a list of fantasy books that I want to reread. And of course, the first one is Aragon. So I thought, let's take a look through memory lane at some of the series that I have recently read and would like to get back to because they honestly, like, I haven't stopped thinking about them. They've been living in my mind rent-free. So here we go. So this first book, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about the inheritance cycle because that really is the inspiration for this whole video. And I really think that there's so many people out there who have not yet read this series, and I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you're sleeping on this, and I definitely think I'm going to reread this year. I don't have TBRs for the whole year, but if I was going to create a TBR, this would be on it at some point, probably closer to the release of Murtagh. This series follows a young man named Aragon in the world of Alagasia, and he is a young farm boy. He has been orphaned, and he grows up on his uncle's farm with his cousin, and they are living in Paolini Valley. And so it's pretty removed from a lot of the political machinations of the world. This world has some evil creatures, it has kind of a dark ruler aspect, and one of the days Aragon is out hunting and this flash appears before him, and all of a sudden he sees there's a dragon egg, and he takes the dragon egg. He doesn't really know that it's a dragon egg quite yet, but eventually this dragon hatches, and it goes on from there. So it's got all the things that you want in it as a fantasy reader. It's a coming-of-age tale. It's got magic. It's got dragons, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do because Christopher Paolini said that he's going to release illustrated editions of at least Aragon. I don't know if it's going to be the whole inheritance cycle. If it is, it doesn't matter. Take my money. I'm still going to buy the new illustrated edition of Aragon because that was one of the more formative books in my fantasy reading life and my fantasy reading journey. I know I've talked about this several times on my channel before, where it was like I was in high school, I had this solid group of friends, and literally every single one of us was reading Aragon. So it was like, I've got a lot of nostalgic feels for it. I want to reread the whole 4-book series because as we get closer and closer to the end, there's a lot of political things and magical things that happened that I really want to refresh myself on before I begin Murtagh. And obviously I'm going to pick up that book. So yeah, if you haven't already picked up this series, this is the perfect year to do it because of that new release. And I'm really excited. I was so stoked when I saw Chris Paolini just pop into Daniel Green's video, and it was amazing. These are all really high fantasy series, except for maybe one isn't really. But the next one that I have to talk about, this is The Final Empire, written by Brandon Sanderson, book number 1 of the First Era Mistborn trilogy. And this has been rising to the top of my mind of something that I would like to reread because I have been working my way through Mistborn Era 2 recently. In the last month alone, I finished Bands of Mourning, and I finished, what is the last one? No, I finished Shadows of Self and Bands of Mourning. And then I have to begin the Lost Metal? Yeah, I have to begin the Lost Metal. And I was planning on doing those because I want to start reading Rhythms of War. And I was under the impression that you want to finish Mistborn Era 2 before you begin Rhythms of War. Anyway, so that's what I had been doing. And in the latter books of Mistborn Era 2, there's a lot of things that harken back to Mistborn Era 1, and it just made me really miss these guys. It really made me miss Kelsier and Vin, and it's so interesting to see how these like characters in this new-ish world think about Vin, think about Kelsier, how they think about the Dark Lord. What do they call him? The Lord Ruler, that's his name. How they think about the Lord Ruler, how they think about the Khandra, and like in Mistborn Era 1, we are someone who are finding out more about the Khandra, but like Mistborn Era 2, the Khandra is something that's just like like there's the assumption that you already know about the Khandra because of this. Anyways, it's really been something that I have been thinking about. It's been on my mind recently because I've been recently working my way through this, and I think it would be fun. I think it would be a lot of fun to reread Mistborn Era 1. Okay, I just realized I didn't actually talk about what this book series was about. So this follows a young group of like we follow our main character Vin, who is a street urchin at the time of like us meeting her. And she gets involved with this like underground rebellious group in this world that is covered in ash, and it is ruled by the Lord Ruler. This underground group, they're plotting a rebellion, and in this underground group, there's a lot of folks here that have these inherent Mistborn abilities. They're able to ingest metals, certain metals, to be able to enhance their powers. It could be that they would push and pull so that way they can technically fly. They're basically like pushing off of some type of metal anchor to be able to jump high heights or fly over buildings or whatever. And then there's some that can hear really well. There's some that are very strong. And so our young street urchin Vin finds herself amongst this group early on. And as the trilogy goes on, it's more political. We get to see the consequences of this rebellion in the larger world. And it's really, really great. I know I've brought up this series before too. And is it technically a series if there's only 2 books out now? Who cares? This is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was one of the early books that I read on BookTube as far as like fantasy books that really spurned me on in my like newish modern fantasy reading journey. It was this one. And from like the first page onward, I knew that I had picked up something special. Like I just had immediate feelings about it. It was like an immediate 5-star read. There was no way that this book would not be a 5-star read for me. And I kind of want to reread this book to see if it still holds up in my mind. Because I've been on BookTube for quite a long time. I've been a part of Fantasy BookTube for a long time. The opinions that this book brings out, do I still have the same feelings? Am I still pro Kvothe? So, The Name of the Wind, how do you even describe this? This follows... Okay, so this is a story told within a story. The initial setting is there's this young chronicler who is trying to write like the story of his lifetime, and he wants to track down this mysterious figure called Kvothe, who, you know, is basically purported to be this like slayer of dragons, slayer of kings, better of women. I mean, just this like larger than life kind of character, and he stumbles across this tavern in the middle of the night, and he encounters this man named Coat, who decided he's going to tell the story of Kvothe. We follow young Kvothe through his lifetime, so it's a story within a story. There's dark magic afoot, and it's been so long since I've been able to read this that I want to know. Like I said, I want to know if I'm still a Team Kvothe, or do I feel like he's full of shit like so many other people do? And I think it would be really interesting to revisit that, because there are just people who just pick apart this book and try and figure out the broader themes and the broader magic that's afoot. And I kind of want to take my time and see what that's about. But I read it so long ago, like at the start of my booktube journey, at the start of my new modern fantasy era reading self, that there's a lot that I need to revisit, and I need to put some puzzle pieces back together. Here we have Six of Crows. This is part of the Six of Crows duology written by Leigh Bardugo. In my opinion, these two books are so far the only worthwhile reads of Leigh Bardugo's. There, I said it. This is a heist story of a young group of individuals. You know, I have a thing for found family amongst young up-and-comers, the underdogs, and people who live in the underbelly of society. That is really my jam, and that's what you're going to find in Six of Crows. It's just been something that has been sitting on my shelf for a long time. It was a fantastic read, and I think I need to revisit it, because I've been thinking a lot about Mistborn Era 1. This is extremely similar in terms of like heist activity. No, this one's extremely similar to The Lies of Lockamora. I don't know what I'm saying. Don't listen to me. But this has just a really fun story attached to it, but just like superhuman characters that are going through a lot. The way that they rely on each other, and there's just a wonderful story amongst all of them. The Victorian Rebel series kind of reminds me of Six of Crows, just in the sense that there's these people who work for more underbelly society, anti-hero kinds of events. They're doing extremely illegal activities, but they're your favorite, and you can't help but root for them. And here I have Malice, book number 1 of the Faithful and the Fallen series, written by John Gwynne. This book series, what can I say? I finished book number 4, I think in 2021. And it was so epic. It was so mind-blowing. And it just made me want to immediately turn around and reread this book. Talk about a book series that has been living rent-free in my mind for a number of years. It is this one. And what's so funny is I started this one so long ago. I started Malice so long ago because a friend of mine kept bothering me about it. Like, a friend of mine in real life. He would just constantly be like, have you read Malice yet? Have you read Malice yet? It took me forever to finish it. I don't know what I was thinking, but really, the way I think the best way to read most of John Gwynne's books, as I've now read the full 4-book series of The Faithful and the Fallen. I am in the middle of The Shadow of the Gods, The Hunger of the Gods, in his new Bloodsworn saga. And I just started on the Of Blood and Bone trilogy, which is like the sequel series to The Faithful and the Fallen. It takes place in the Banished Lands. I'm beginning to really appreciate that to get the full impact of John Gwynne's stories, you really got to read them back to back to back. Because the way that each one ends off and the action leaves off from one to the other, they start off almost immediately after the events of the one prior to it. So I didn't really do that with Malice. Like, I read Malice, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to put this down and just kind of like dip my toes in other fantasy series, when I really should have just picked this whole series back up again and started it over. It was so epic. It was so great. Such a good ending. I really want to go back and read from the beginning. That book series follows a number of characters. It's a huge cast. It's a huge saga. But it takes place in the Banished Lands that was once ruled by giants. And after a large number of years, the power of the giants waned, and then the power of men rose, and they kind of infiltrated the whole land, right? But in the midst of it all, there's been this otherworldly battle going on between these angelic creatures called the Ben Elem and these demonic creatures called the Kadashim. The Kadashim, they have this dark host, this dark lord named Azeroth that has been enchained, enslaved, and they're trying to set him free, and the Ben Elem are really not, they don't want that to happen. And it kind of all comes together when these powers start disrupting the human world, and humans have to now intersperse themselves into this Ben Alem and Kadashim battle for ultimate supremacy, right? Oh, so good. It was so good. If you're looking for a good fantasy series to start with in this year, 2023, that's a good one too. And then the final series that I want to mention, this is the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, written by Mark Lawrence. This was just completely out of left field. This whole trilogy swept BookTube for a long time, and I was among that fervor. Like, I was constantly waiting for the new book to come out. This trilogy follows a young woman named Nona Gray, who is an orphan, and this is a world where people, some of them, not everyone, have these different inherent abilities, and she has been accused of thievery and or murder. As she's walking up to the gallows, there's this nun who comes to her rescue and decides to bring her to the convent of Sweet Mercy. And then this whole trilogy follows these wonderful nuns in their convent. It's got a wonderful magical academy concept. There's sapphic romance in there. It's a cool magical world. That trilogy is really unlike anything that I have ever read. So there we have it. That was a pretty good list. It was 6 fantasy series that I would really love to reread, that I've been thinking about for a long time. Is this a surprising list to any of you? I bet you're wondering why Realm of the Elderlings isn't in there. But for me, it's a little too soon. We're just a little too attached to the outcome of Chivalry Farseer that I can't quite jump into that world of pain quite yet, so that's why that one's not in here. But were you surprised about any of my picks? Or do you have other picks of your own? Let me know in the comment section below. If you've made it this far, go ahead and put a dragon in here for Aragon, for Christopher Paolini's new release. Let me know if you plan on rereading any of those books in the Inheritance cycle as we celebrate the release of Murtagh this year. And yeah, follow me on my social media if you want. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread. The same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And what's the next part? You know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.